Hi, second grade. I'm going to get started with chapter 13 of Charlotte's Web. The last chapter is when they had a meeting and they tried to come up with a new word. Think for a minute what the new word is. Terrific. Yes, terrific. They came up with terrific, and Wilbur's like, I'm not terrific. Charlotte's like, yes, you are. So terrific is what Charlotte's going to work on to write in the web. Shout out to Daisy, my little assistant. 93 pages. She did the subtraction for me and sent it to me. So thanks, Daisy. 93 pages we have left. All right, here we go. Good progress. Chapter 13. Far into the night, while the other creatures slept, Charlotte worked on her web. First, she ripped out a few of the orb lines near the center. She left the radial lines alone, as they were needed for support. As she worked, her 8 legs were of great help to her. So were her teeth. She loved to weave, and she was an expert at it. When she was finished ripping things out, her web looked something like this. And I'm going to show you the picture right now so you have an idea of what her web looked like. A spider can produce several kinds of thread. She uses a dry, tough thread for foundation lines, and she uses a sticky thread for snare lines, the ones that catch and hold the insects. Charlotte decided to use her dry thread for writing the message. If I write the word terrific with sticky thread, she thought, every bug that comes along will get stuck in it, and that will spoil the effort. Now let's see. Terrific. T. The first letter is a T. Charlotte climbed to the point at the top left-hand side of the web. Swinging her spinnerets into position, she attached her thread and then dropped down. As she dropped, her spinning tubes went into action and she let out the thread. At the bottom, she attached the thread. This formed the upright part of the letter T. Charlotte was not satisfied, however. She climbed up and made another attachment right next to the first. Then she carried the line down so that she had a double line instead of a single line. It will show up better if I make the whole word with double lines. She climbed back up and moved about an inch to the left. She touched her spinnerets to the web, and then she carried the line across to the right, forming the top of the T. She repeated this, making it double. Her 8 legs were busy. Next letter, E. Charlotte got so interested in her work, she began to talk to herself as though to cheer herself on. If you had been sitting quietly in the barn cellar that evening, you would have heard her saying stuff like this. Now for the R, up we go, attach, descend, put out a line, whoa, attach, good, up you go, repeat, attach, descend, put out a line, whoa girl, steady now, attach, climb, attach, over to the right, put out a line, attach, now right and down and swing that loop around and around, now into the left, attach, climb, repeat, okay, easy, keep those lines together. Now then, out and down to make the R. Put out a line, whoa, attach, ascend, repeat, good girl. And so, talking to herself, the spider worked at a difficult pace. When it was completed, she was hungry. She ate a small bug that she was saving, and then she slept. The next morning, Wilbur arose and stood beneath the web. He breathed in the morning air into his lungs. Drops of dew catching the sun made the web stand out clearly. When Lurvy arrived with breakfast, there was the handsome pig, and over the handsome pig, woven neatly in block letters, were the words terrific. Another miracle. Lurvy rushed and called Mr. Zuckerman, and Mr. Zuckerman rushed and called Mrs. Zuckerman, and Mrs. Zuckerman ran to the phone and called the Arbles. The Arbles climbed into their truck and they hurried over. Everybody stood at the pig pen and stared at the web and read the word over and over. And while Wilbur, who really felt terrific, stood quietly, swelling out his chest and swinging his snout from side to side. Terrific, said Mr. Zuckerman in joyful adoration. Edith, you better phone the reporter for the newspaper and tell him what has happened. He will want to know about this. He may want to bring a photographer. There isn't a pig in the whole state that is as terrific as our pig. The news spread. People had journeyed to see Wilbur when he was some pig. And now they were going to come back to see the terrific pig. That afternoon when Mr. Zuckerman went to milk the cows and clean out the pens, he was still thinking about what a wonderful pig he owned. Lurvy, he called, there's to be no more cow manure thrown into that pig pen. I have a terrific pig, you know. I want that pig to have clean, fresh straw every day to sleep on. Do you understand? Yes, sir, said Lurvy. Furthermore, said Mr. Zuckerman, I want you to start building a crate for Wilbur. I have decided to take the pig to the fair. The fair is on September 6th. Make a crate large enough. We're going to paint some letters on it. What will the letters say? Asked Lurvy. They will say, the Zuckerman's famous pig. Lurvy picked up a pitchfork and walked away to get some clean straw. Having such an important pig was going to mean plenty of extra work. He could definitely see that. Below in the apple orchard, at the end of a path, was a dump where Mr. Zuckerman threw all sorts of trash and stuff that no one wanted anymore. Here, in a small opening, hidden by some wild raspberry bushes, was an astonishing pile of old bottles, empty tin cans, dirty rags, some metal, some broken bottles, some broken hinges, some broken springs, some dead batteries, some old magazines, some old dish mops, an old pair of pants, a rusty spike, a leaky pail, some stoppers, and a useless junk of all sorts and kinds, such as a crank for a broken freezer. Templeton knew that place. It was called the dump, and he liked it. It was good hiding places. There were good hiding places there. Excellent hiding places for a rat. And there was usually a tin can with food left in it. Templeton was down there now rummaging around. And when he returned to the barn, he carried in his mouth an advertisement that he tore out of a magazine. How about this, he said, showing it to Charlotte. It says crunchy. Crunchy. I think crunchy would be a good word to write in your web. No, that's completely the wrong idea, replied Charlotte. You couldn't have a worse idea. We don't want Mr. Zuckerman to think that Wilbur is crunchy. He might start thinking crispy. And crispy and crunchy are words that describe bacon and ham. And that's the meat of a pig. That would put ideas into his head. We don't want to advertise that he's crunchy and crispy. We want to advertise how special he is. Please get another word, Templeton. The rat looked disgusted, but he sneaked away back to the dump, and he was back in a while with a piece of cloth. How about this, he said. I pulled it off of a t-shirt. Charlotte examined it. Pre-shrunk. I'm sorry, Templeton, she said, but pre-shrunk is out of the question. We want Mr. Zuckerman to think as Wilbur as a beautiful, filled-out pig, not a shrunken pig. Try again. What do you think I am, a messenger? Grumbled the rat. I'm not going to spend all my days going back and forth from the dump to you, showing you advertising material. All right, said Charlotte. Just try one more time. That's all I ask. I'll tell you what I'll do, said Templeton. I know there's a package of dish soap in the woodshed. It has writing on it. I'll rip off some of it and bring it to you. He climbed on the rope that hung on the wall and disappeared through a hole in the ceiling. And when he came back, he had a strip of blue and white paper in his mouth. There, he said, I ripped this off of the dish soap bottle. Charlotte read the words. Radiant action. What does it mean? Asked Charlotte, who had never used dish soap in her life. How do I know? Said Templeton. You asked for words, I brought you words. I suppose the next thing you'll want is me to bring you a dictionary. Together they studied the paper. Radiant action, repeated Charlotte slowly. Hey, Wilbur, she called. Wilbur was asleep on his straw. Run around, said Charlotte. I want to see if you're radiant. Wilbur raced to the end of the yard. Now come back faster, said Charlotte. Wilbur galloped back. His skin shone. He had a beautiful tail with a cute curl in it. Jump in the air, cried Charlotte. Wilbur jumped as high as he could. Keep your knees straight. Touch the ground with your ears, cried Charlotte. Wilbur obeyed. Do a backflip with a twist in it, cried Charlotte. Wilbur went over backwards and twisting as he did. Okay, Wilbur, said Charlotte. You can go back to sleep. Okay, Templeton, this will work, I guess. I'm not sure if Wilbur's actually radiant, but he is an interesting pig. Actually, said Wilbur, I think I am radiant. Do you? Said Charlotte, looking at him with affection. Well, you're definitely a good little pig, so I guess you'll be radiant. I'm in this thing pretty deep now. I guess I'm going to use whatever special words I can find. Tired from romping around, Wilbur lied down in the clean straw and closed his eyes. The straw was a little scratchy. It was not nearly as comfortable as laying in cow manure, which was always delightfully soft. So he pushed the straw to one side and stretched out in the little bit of manure that was left on the floor. Wilbur sighed. Whew, it had been a busy day. His first day of being a terrific pig, you know. Dozens of people visited him in the afternoon. He had to stand and pose, and he had to look as terrific as he could. Now he was tired out. Fern had arrived and seated herself quietly on the stool in the corner. Tell me a story, Charlotte, said Wilbur, as he laid, waiting to fall asleep. Please tell me a story. So Charlotte, although she too was very tired, did what Wilbur asked. Once upon a time, she began, I had a beautiful cousin who managed to build her web across a small stream. One day, a tiny fish leaped into the air and got tangled in the web. My cousin was very much surprised, of course. The fish was thrashing wildly. My cousin hardly dared to tackle it, but she did. She swooped down and she threw great masses of web around the fish, and she fought it bravely and captured it. So did she succeed? Asked Wilbur. Well, it was a never-to-be-forgotten-about battle, said Charlotte. There was the fish, caught only by one fin, and its tail wildly thrashing. Then there was the web, sagging dangerously under the weight of the fish. How much did the fish weigh? Asked Wilbur. I don't know, said Charlotte. There was my cousin, slipping in, dodging out, being beaten mercilessly over the head by a wildly thrashing fish. Coming in, coming out, throwing her threads over the fish, fighting hard. First, she threw some around its tail, but the fish just lashed back. Then she put some web over the middle section. The fish lashed back again. Then she dodged to one side and threw some over the other fin. Then she went to his head and tried to put some web over his head. Then what happened? Asked Wilbur. Nothing, said Charlotte. The fish lost the fight. My cousin wrapped it up so tight it couldn't budge. Then what happened? Asked Wilbur. Nothing, said Charlotte. My cousin kept the fish for a while, And then when she got good and ready, she ate the fish. Oh, tell me another story, begged Wilbur. So Charlotte told him about another cousin of hers, who was an aeronaut. What's an aeronaut? Asked Wilbur. A balloonist, said Charlotte. My cousin used to stand on her head and let out enough thread to form a balloon. Then she'd let go and float through the air and be carried up in the warm wind. Is that true, or are you making these up? Asked Wilbur. It's true, said Charlotte. I have some remarkable cousins. And now, Wilbur, it's time for you to go to sleep. Will you sing me a song, said Wilbur, closing his eyes. So Charlotte sang a lullaby, and while the crickets chirped in the grass and the barn got dark, this is the song she sang. Sleep, sleep, my friend, my only, deep, deep in the dark. Be not afraid, be not lonely. This is the hour when you hear the frogs and the peepers. They are chirping from the woods and from the bushes. Rest from cares, my one and only, and fall asleep in the dark. Wilbur was already asleep when she ended her song. Fern got up and went home. That's the end of that chapter. That was a long chapter. A couple pictures here. Wilbur being terrific. Templeton in the dump. Wilbur trying to be radiant. The story she said about her cousin capturing the fish. That's it. If you can, there were 3 words I thought would be great if you could message me on Seesaw. Let me know what radiant means. Wilbur said he is a radiant pig. What does it mean to be radiant? And then at the beginning, she said, first, Charlotte ripped out a few of the orb lines. See if you can figure out what the orb lines, O-R-B, are in a spider's web. Orb lines. And then it said she did not rip out the radial lines. So see if you can find out what the radial lines are in a spider's web. And that's spelled R-A-D-I-A-L. So see if you can find what those 3 words mean. You can let me know on Seesaw. Thank you all for listening. We ended on page 104. Oh, that is simple, easy, peasy, lemon squeezy. We ended on 104, and there's 184 pages. So Mrs. Fulop can do that in her head, and I bet you all can too.